Hi everybody, it's Miss Renz here. I'm going to talk about 1.5. This is 7th grade adding and subtracting rational numbers. Don't let the word rational for rational numbers make you think that you're doing anything super fancy. Rational numbers are just our numbers with fractions and decimals. So that's what we're working with. And this is a great problem for us to start with. So we have this situation where Malik hikes this trail, Castle Trail it's called, from point A to point B. And we know that point A is below sea level. So right here is sea level. They gave you a nice little line here. So let's go ahead and put a 0 there at sea level. And then you have to figure out possible places where A starts and B ends. I'm thinking of that as a possible distance from A to sea level and possible distance from sea level to the summit. All right. So if you haven't already done so, make sure that you have this out and you're ready to go and copy it down with me as we go. So that's your expectation. Okay, so what I did here is I drew a number line, and I started with putting 0 on the number line, and an A a little bit to the left of 0, and a B over here to the right of 0. And we know that the distance from A to B is 120.5. That's how far he climbed. And so we just have to come up with some possible differences and distances. It doesn't say what is correct and what's not. So I'm going to start with the easiest one here, and that's a half. In other words, I'm going to think of this as from A to 0, or A to sea level, is just a half a meter. Obviously, it looks like it's more, but just for number's sake, I think this is a nice one to start with. And then we would have to figure out what would the distance be from 0 to B, from sea level to the summit, if the whole distance is 120.5. And so if this distance is just a half, and the whole thing is 120.5, then this has to be from 0 to B, 120. Right? So let's just do one more because we're just asked to come up with some possible values. I think something a little more reasonable would be that it's 20 from A to sea level, so this distance is 20. And if this distance is 20, then we have to figure out how far is it from sea level to the summit in order for all of this together to equal 120.5. And so we would know that this would have to be from sea level to the summit 100.5 meters. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the next page. Okay, I'm using my whiteboard here to talk about this next problem. We're looking at adding and subtracting rational numbers again. So in this first example, we have a volcano. That's what my lovely drawing here is. This is a volcano. And this is the lava tube. And the lava tube, the chamber down here, is 2 3/4. Are these miles? They must be miles. 2 3/4 miles below sea level. So this is our sea level right here, this line. And we know the distance between the lava chamber and the top of this volcano summit is 5 1/4 miles. And so our question is, well, what's the top of the summit? So we're going to make sense of this, all right? So we know, go ahead and put this on a number line. We know that this is where the lava tube is. We're going to put -2 3/4 on our number line. We know that the summit is somewhere over here. This is what we don't know. But we do know that this is 5 1/4, right? We know the distance between the lava tube and the top of the summit is 5 1/4. So we need to figure out what this is. Well, we also know, you guys, we also know that the distance from here to here is 2 3/4, isn't it? So we just need to figure out what is the distance from here to here so that it can add together to be 5 1/4. Now notice I said 2 3/4 is the distance. It's not a negative 2 3/4. This location is negative 2 3/4, but this distance is 2 3/4. We need to figure out 2 3/4 plus what distance is going to equal our 5 1/4. All right, this chunk plus this unknown chunk equals this whole thing. So this is a subtraction problem, right? To figure this out, I need to subtract 2 3/4 from my 5 1/4. So I'm going to do this over here on the side of this whiteboard. I have 5. Oh, I hope you guys can see that. 5 1/4. And I want to subtract 2 3/4. Right? Now I could start right away and say 5 minus 2 is 3, but I don't want to do that quite yet because I'm noticing my fractions. If I want to take away 3/4 from 1/4, I'm going to have to rewrite this mixed number. And you guys should have remembered this from 5th grade. And if not, because it's been a while, you can just kind of go along with me here. So I'm going to have to rewrite this so I can actually subtract 2 3/4. So I'm going to call this 4 4/4. Right? 4 4/4 is another name for 5. But if I do that, then I can combine the 4/4 and the 1/4 into 5/4. So I end up with 4 5/4 minus 2 3/4. And now I can rock and roll. So 5/4 minus 3/4 is 2/4. 4 wholes minus 2 wholes is 2 wholes, and 2 2/4 is also known as 2 1/2. So I know that this distance from sea level to the top of the summit of the volcano is 2 1/2 miles. Okay. Okay, now to finish off, we're just going to do a few problems as practice. And I'm referring to these try it problems. And so let's start with the first one. The first one we have here is negative 2 5/10, and we're adding a negative 5 6/10. Now, because I read this as 2 5/10, and I know this is 6/10, these are going to speak nicely to each other. In fact, I'm going to rewrite this as negative 2 5/10 plus negative 5 6/10, right? I also want to visualize where is this on the number line. So here is negative 2 5/10, right? Somewhere over here. Now I'm essentially subtracting 5 6/10 because when I add a negative, it's like I'm subtracting or I'm adding more onto the negative side of the number line. And so essentially I'm taking 2 5/10 and I'm adding 5 6/10. And I end up at 7 11/10, which is equal to 8 1/10. All right, let's try one more. Let's take a look at how about C? Let's do C. Negative 135, and it has in there 0.4, but I'm going to write that as 4/10 because that's how we would read that, 4/10. And I want to make sure that we're using fractions when we can. And then we're adding, what does that say? 78.5. Well, I'm going to start by just erasing this 1/2 and writing it as 5/10 because now this speaks really well with that, right? I'm going to visualize where this is on the number line. So I know that negative 35 4/10 is way over here on the number line. And when I add 78 5/10, I'm not adding enough to even get to 0. So I'm adding 78 5/10 and I end up somewhere right here, but I'm here on the negative side of the number line, right? So I'm going to go ahead and figure out where I'm at by taking 135 4/10, and I'm going to subtract 78 5/10. I'm going to start with these fractions. I can't take 5/10 from 4/10, so I'm going to call this 134 10/10. And that allows me to look at this as 14/10 minus 8/10 is 6/10. And then 134 minus 78 is going to give me 56. So I'm at 56 6/10, which I'm going to rewrite as 56 3/5. All right, that should be enough of an introduction to get you guys going on your practice problems. Thanks for listening.